Welcome to Pagan Coffee Talk. Here are your hosts, Lady Alba and Lord Knight.
The subject we're talking about today is not our tradition.
Okay.
This came about because Jay Woodward from Cauldron Brew asked us one time about, he was trying to get us to compare our tradition with someone else's tradition. And we basically said, no, we don't do that because it's not our tradition. And then I had to proceed to explain to him why this was such an important thing in the traditional community.
I will... Oh my goodness. I can't remember if it was... Was it Ray Buckland's wife, or it might have been Janet Farrar. It was one of the pivotal 60s, 70s.
Right.
Yeah. Priestesses who came out of one of the really well-known traditions. And there's this interview, and it's online. I'm sure you can find it with a little bit of digging. There's this amazing interview that she did, and the premise of the entire interview was just that. She was asked, what do you think about modern craft? And she goes, well, it's not my craft, but that's fine. And she must have repeated that, I don't know how many times. And I know that the interviewer was clearly trying to poke at her. They were trying to get her to say something disparaging or negative.
They wanted that hot take.
Absolutely. And she just kept going, yeah, it's not the same. It's not what I do. It's not what I believe. It's not, but, it's not my craft.
Right.
So we see this a lot. Oh, man.
I mean, because in our area, I don't know if a lot of people don't realize this, we interact with a lot of other temples and covens and...
Yeah. And there's different reasons for this, right? Some of it is because over the years, there have been it's almost like... This sounds terrible, right?
It's sort of like cross-contamination.
No. It's cross relations. It's almost like what you see with sovereignty and with, royal families. It's alliances.
Right.
So we have, basically, you can have a person who shares multiple lineages with different groups in the area. And that's a fairly normal practice. It's how we strengthen bonds. It's how we make friends. It's how we keep the ties. But the number of times that we will say, yeah, I don't know what that was. Or I saw them do this, or I, was part of a ritual, and our elders will continually, it's not our tradition.
Not our tradition.
They do it differently. I remember the first time I saw a particular ritual. Their way of casting circle was so phenomenally different. I was like a deer in headlights. And I mean, I think I was a second degree. And I was just like, what is happening? And there was like a choreography to the way they did things. And I had no idea what I was doing, because I was just like, okay, all right. You know what?
Stand here in this spot.
Yeah, I am a stranger in a strange land. I am literally just going to stand here. And it's funny because, again, as I've gotten older and I've experienced more of these, I've noticed something really fascinating. The elders are usually seated. Right?
Right.
Because it's difficult for them to stand for long periods of time, right? They may have an ailment, whatever it is, or maybe it's just a courtesy. We're just going to get them a chair. But what I have noticed is from their seated positions, they are in a much better spot to literally just observe, make note of any differences, kind of file it away in the bank, right? But they don't feel the same pressure right, to know what's going on or to participate, because they're just like, I'm here, I'm doing my thing.
No, there's something interesting. I'll make a note on this. I'm going to ask a question about that later.
Right, exactly. We'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, sometimes the people from that other tradition are willing to discuss it, and sometimes they're not. And there's not much of anything you can say to argue that.
Well, let's admit it, as soon as they come out and go, well, it's a mystery, yet you know that's going to end the conversation right then.
Right, but you would think that once you're at a certain point, right, that if you've got 5 third degrees in a room from various traditions, we'd be more willing to share or to discuss said mysteries. Not always.
Not always.
Sometimes we shut it down and just go, it's just the way our tradition
because
works.
there are traditions that are brought up that are inside just certain traditions and nowhere else.
Mm-hmm. And please understand that a tradition and a pantheon are not the same thing. Or a myth, right? Like, so you can have 10 different groups that say we are Celtic. We practice Celtic witchcraft. Okay, great. And we are all traditionalists and we come from a traditional background. Okay, great. But everybody does something. Each group is totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah. But yet there's a commonality, but it's not like Christians. It's not like the Methodists and the Baptists. And, you can fly halfway around the country and go to a different Methodist church.
And it will be just like your Methodist church.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there may be a few exceptions, but most things are very predictable. That's not...
Again, it's like if you've been in one Catholic church, you've been in all of them.
Mostly,
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that bad about Catholics. I just mean
yes, it's very, very regimented.
I've never gone to a Baptist church and it be something different.
Yeah, exactly. But we're not like that. Part of what makes a tradition is those individual components that are passed down from the founders and from the elders who have done studies in particular areas that they found to be vital and then incorporated that into their craft. And that's the standard that they set, but it's not always the same. So this gets really confusing for people. I've even had it happen where I in younger years, having people call, like, literally question a practice of ours or question and go, well, why do you do it that way? And sometimes I had an answer, and sometimes I would go, I'll get back to you on that. I need to ask some questions because I don't know.
Right.
I genuinely don't know why, but let me see if I can find out. And sometimes it was above my pay grade, and sometimes it wasn't.
And now we sometimes wish it was below our head.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Because, yeah, now it's, there's almost an expectation at a certain point to know everything about the tradition, and that's almost impossible because it evolves and it changes. But I think the big thing is to not be judgmental, right? Of those differences. I was, we were at a gather not that long ago, and Selena Fox was the speaker.
Right.
And she's very well known.
Yeah.
This is me personally, I do not consider my craft and her craft to be the same.
No.
As a matter of fact, I don't even know that she practices craft. I feel like Selena Fox is more of a pagan...
spiritualist.
Yeah, spiritualist, it's a little different. It's a little different. And I'm not trying to take anything away from her by any means, okay?
Again, this is where this works, not our tradition.
Yes, not our tradition. But I remember remarking that because, my gosh, there were how many covens there being represented? At least 20, probably?
Something like that.
It was a lot. And then not to mention the solitaries and, I remember saying to you, what a safe choice for a speaker.
Yes.
What a great choice, because she's very neutral regarding all of the traditional differences and the non-traditional differences. She's someone who's been around long enough that she was able to talk about history. She was able to talk about events. She was able to talk about pagans in the last, let's say, 40 years.
Right.
But without singling out or ostracizing anybody. She was such a delightfully safe way to go.
Yes.
Yeah, very politically correct for pagans, which is a funny thing to say. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, okay. So everybody was able to walk away with something. But I'm well aware that had someone like you or I been the keynote, that would not have been the case. No. There would be a lot of people scratching their heads going, I don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, that's not my tradition. There it is.
There it is.
And so, yeah, we have to constantly, I think, be aware of that. There are, however, and I don't know if you've ever discussed this or not, there is a way in which traditional meets traditional and confirms traditional.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So it's not like we're always just taking people's word for it.
No.
There is a bit of a protocol, and there is a way in which...
For the lack of better words, there is a call and a counter call sign.
Yeah. It's a passcode.
Yeah.
And the expectation is, yes, a traditionalist, a traditional group, someone who is initiated properly would know this. And that's one of the ways that we can kind of tell, or literally referral. Right. If another priestess that we know really well, and she says, "Hey, this group over here is..."
Listen a minute. If Lady Maya called us up going, "Hey, I want you to work with them." Okay.
Right. Absolutely. And it can sometimes be that easy, but all that really happens under those situations is we are extending our mutual respect. We are extending admiration. We are extending the shared camaraderie. But we are always well aware that there's going to be a lot of things that are not the same.
Well, I mean, and again, when this stuff happens, we automatically know, hey, this person's going to be showing up, coming to our ritual. They're of Ravenwood. They're going to have questions.
Yeah, and for that matter, so might we.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
Because I know there's some things that they do that are completely different from what we do.
Absolutely.
But now at the end of the day, the ritual space and energy always winds up still being the same.
I believe so.
I've never felt uncomfortable in...
But I think, again, that's interesting. But I think that's because we've been around the block so long. I do remember very vividly the first circle that I was in that was not Life Temple.
Right.
Oh, my Lord. I was nervous. I really was. I was very, very nervous. And I remember, and I think it was because I was too wrapped up in the differences or in analyzing them or trying to remember them. And Lord Raceland was like, would you relax?
Just chill.
Yeah, he was like, this is the fun part. Stop it.
We don't have to do nothing but stand here.
Exactly. And I was like, but. And he was like, I'm going to get you some tequila if you don't calm down. And, but yeah, because I was so attentive to all those little things that were going on around me that were different than the way Life Temple did it. Now I'm just like, meh, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah, they hold their anthem that way. That's fine. Hey, yeah, okay.
Is that the way they do it?
Yeah, okay.
How can they get their fingers to work like that?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many little intricacies of things like that. So anyway, yeah. So very, very common. And I don't know when we say it, when we really just say, hey, not my tradition, right? How do you...
Well, I could see where somebody could possibly take it as an insult. Where it's just me going, no, there's differences here, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're doing. It's just not the way I do it.
It's just become an easy way to sort of shrug our shoulders. Yeah, right. We're not writing anyone off, and we're certainly not trying to be rude or disregard them. It literally is just us saying, Yeah, they're a little different.
They're a little different. Yeah. This is not what I believe in, but...
And maybe it is the same belief. Like,
maybe.
There's what's ironic. Some of it is the beliefs are identical, but the mechanics.
The mechanic or the method of it
is different. And you go, all right, fine. We went 2 different routes on the map. We got to the same damn place. That's fine.
Life goes on.
Yeah.
So again, not our tradition.
Yep. And honestly, for a lot of us, that's what it is. The destination is the same. So we don't really care, what boat you took to get there.
See, now, the way Lord Min sort of explained this to me, the way it came on, is back in the day, way back, there used to be this infighting in between covens on which way was the right way.
Well, because I think also back then, there was an opportunity for supremacy.
Yes.
You had the Farrars, you had the Frosts, you had Buckland, you had Aleister Crowley, right? These people were all happening at the same time. You had Sybil Leek. They were all relevant at the same time. So yes, everybody was sort of fighting to get the right way out first. And now we're in the era of fuck right way, here's all the ways. And ironically, it's still just as confusing as it was then. Then it was who's right and who's wrong. Now it's just, holy crap, there's so much to choose from. How do I narrow this down?
Right. Which ways were the oldest way? Which ways weren't the oldest ways?
Yeah. And I think that the biggest thing, and it was always my takeaway, was that Temple was always very, very, very free in saying, we are not teaching you the way.
We're teaching you a way.
Yeah, this is not the Mandalorian. We're right. There is no prize baby Yoda at the end. You don't get a Grogu. Yeah, it's not the way. We are teaching you a way. And then, depending on how you advance and what happens along your journey, you might take that way and modify it to another way. And so be it.
And then begins yet a new tradition along this branch.
Yep. And that's why there's so many damn traditions, and that's all right. And you do get into a lot of there is still now, I think there's a little bit of that, well, who founded it and who are they and what were they known for? And that's just it. Not every tradition has that. For as many people as were out in front, fighting the good fight of getting pagans their rights and being political, there were just as many who went, I don't want to go lobby on Capitol Hill. I just want to have a little group in my backyard and
do what we do.
And so there's many, many elders that never made the history books, that never, they didn't leave an indelible mark in the same way, except with the people that they passed their knowledge down to.
As far as what you're talking about, let's take a prime example. Our elder and founder, Lord Min. And somebody came up online. It's like, I've tried to look him up. I can't find nothing except for what's on your website.
That's not surprising.
No,
not at all.
You know how many elders I know that are that exact same way?
Absolutely. And then the other thing is, and we talked about this on a previous podcast, how many elders share the same spiritual name? How do you know who you're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah. Lady Minerva is times 20. So, now, but again, it's ironic because regionally, you will mention a particular elder's name and others will go, oh yeah, absolutely. I know of that person, or I met them once, or I know, some of their spiritual children. But yes, outside of that, no, you might not ever hear a person's name.
I know there's for us and the communities we run around, yes, there's certain places I can go to South Carolina, mentioning certain names. People go, oh, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But then in other places, not so much.
Not so much.
So just, keep that in mind. Traditions are wide and varied and they're all valid, but there's plenty of times that you will find yourself just saying, that's not my tradition. That's okay.
And it's all right.
Yeah. It's kind of like choosing coffee.
Coffee?
Not my roast.
Coffee? You said coffee?
I know. All right, I'll pour you another cup.
Thank you.
So, I think I'm in a really strange position in craft in that I am a priestess who was largely trained by men.
Yes.
And
Which does place you into a small disadvantage.
yeah, maybe.
You tend to act more like a priest than a priestess sometimes.
Yeah, fair. But what I think is interesting is that because I came into temple with already a good bit of respect, right, for men, and then I understood paganism as both god and goddess.
Right.
And even though, sure, I guess like a lot of people, I put goddess a bit above him, I learned to balance that out. But there are still so many forms of paganism that put men in the corner.
Yes.
We in classes have talked about this a lot over the years, how there's many female dominant groups who literally the horn god is like an afterthought in the corner.
Right.
And men are not as relevant in their practices. It's so goddess centric. We don't do that.
No.
I have taken a little bit of heat in some ways as a priestess for effectively standing up for priests and the male form and their contribution. I think it's interesting that is going on. I mean, I understand, the patriarchy is part of the problem.
Right.
Christianity being male-centered is part of the problem. But what the hell is it like for a dude who's practicing and who's part of this community? Like, what is that doing to our men?
Well, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not saying this to be mean or anything, but since like you've came onto the podcast compared to me and Lord Oswin, numbers have already upticked. And there's part of me that's sitting back. Is it because you're hearing the same thing, but now from a priestess instead of a priest? Is there a bias in our community,
right,
to where in the world, especially on like podcasts and stuff like this,
right,
just like in the other one, you're going to listen to a priest before you do a nun. Are we having the same problem here?
Interesting.
Because of our culture.
Yeah. Are we biased towards men? Wow. I find that's fascinating because I don't understand how a covenstead works if you don't have both.
Thank you.
At all.
At all.
It is the literal, it's the foundation of life, people. That's how I always go back to this. I'm like, it's,
It's nature.
Yeah. It's the male and the female coming together, and it is the fruit of their labors and loins. And that is, yeah.
I mean, come on. We have there is a part of our ritual.
Yes. The great right. Yeah, sure.
That's all this is about.
Well, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, sure, when you boil it all down, I mean, that's it. It's every story is the union of.
Right.
Every story is either about the union of the god and goddess, the separation of the god and goddess, the fight to get back to one another. Yeah. And all of the different dynamics that exist between them. Very rarely is it just one or the other. Now, sure, throughout history, there have been like the Greeks. I understand Zeus was put on a pedestal. I get that. The Vikings, Odin was put on a pedestal. But is that just our perception of things? Modern? Like, is that just how it was taught to us? Because I don't think so.
And I don't think it is as focused as just Odin.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Freya is...
Oh
my God.
Is a phenomenal goddess.
She's a force. But Odin would not be without her. And, Zeus, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, he was this, as a figure, right? He was the culmination. He was all the gods in one.
Hence the reason the All-Father.
Yeah, well, no, that's Odin, yeah. But but again, they're so closely tied. Yeah. I just cannot understand where it's almost, like we have to be cautious of what is feminist craft. Maybe that's a way of looking at it.
Maybe.
It's
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with the extreme feminist people in craft in their covens. It's just, it would be a crying shame if it was everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. And that's, I think, what I'm concerned about is that there are absolutely traditions that are being formed and created based on this.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
It's not my favorite thing either.
I don't like that one bit. I
mean, I'm not like calling anybody out, but yes, when we go to these gatherings and stuff, as a priest talking to some of these priestesses, there's a little bit of talking down to, or a little less respect compared to what they do for you.
Yeah, and that's
not that I have a problem with this or anything, but again, there's you see it.
No, I know. I have gone so far that at a lot of public events now, I wear the symbol. I will wear a very overtly male symbol at these events.
Right.
But short of having a penis dangling from my neck.
Right.
I'm making it extremely clear that that is a image I want to display, and I want people to understand that connection. And it may seem a little odd to some people, like, why is she wearing the horn god? Why not?
Why not? Well, again, Lady Keegan was taking some classes, and she was listening to this woman. This woman kept on going on for her 15, 20 minutes on how all women need to go out and find their spirituality before all us guys go out there and get it.
What?
Literally was sort of like the sentiment of what she was saying.
Yeesh.
Like spirituality was some commodity on a shelf that we were going to run out of because all the guys took it.
Oh, okay. That's really bizarre. Well, I mean, similarly, at many pagan shops and, bookstores and places where they hold classes or events, I've been in rooms where, if there's one or two men, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's primarily all women. Now, I don't know if that's an interest or desire thing, but I do kind of go, are we not making this as inviting an environment for men? We also have seen in recent years, right, there's a huge resurgence of the Viking,
right,
and the Norse tradition, and most men are gravitating to it. Every guy I meet lately who is pagan, like I had a cashier at the grocery store just 2 days ago say, "Can I see the tattoos on your hands?" And I held them out, and he goes, "Oh man, I was hoping they were runes." And I'm looking at this 17-year-old kid like, what the hell do you know about runes, boy? Because, they're finding, and there's a reclaiming happening for men of their own spiritual origin. But I'm very concerned that this is a big tipping point, because the more the Norse tradition takes hold, we're going to start seeing what could potentially be all male groups. Yeah. And
well, we already have those. The radical fairies were supposed to be an all men group.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I don't know.
And I do realize that some of these more Dianic groups are now starting, some of them, not all of them, are starting to allow transgender women in their groups.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dianics are usually the ones who are like, put the penis in the corner.
And not all of them. I'm sure there's
not all of them.
There's a few Dianics out there that still won't even go that far.
Yeah, but I just don't see men leaning into craft anymore. I see them almost exclusively going to Norse. And I'm concerned about that for a number of reasons. One, because Norse, when you start getting into the history, right, it's so aggressive.
Yes.
and I get it. Like, I get the allure of the testosterone but there's no balance in that.
Well, again, we're talking about a warrior.
Yes. Yes.
What is that, lifestyle?
Well, yeah. Yeah. But there's no balance.
No.
And then you have all of these negative associations with white supremacy and, not neo-Nazis. One of the things I loved was at one of the recent gathers we went to, someone was passing out stickers that literally said, Odin doesn't hate anyone. And because they're trying to spread that message that just because you're following the Norse path does not automatically make you,
because these things, again, the white supremacy and the Nazis, that came later.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got things like a Satru, which is largely misunderstood and misconstrued. But again, these are very, very intensely male traditions. And I'm like, we made that. Yes. Congratulations, everybody. We kind of, I fear, downgraded men enough in our faith that now they're like, well, we have to do our own thing.
Right.
To find a home in this. That's
and it seems sad.
Frustrating.
But I have to ask, now, will this also be a good counterbalance to the Dianics?
I don't know.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, because I think there's a difference between the way a lot of people, right, they form relationships with deity and often of the same gender. So they tend to overlook the other side. I don't think it's deliberate. It's just what happens. So if you've got someone who, has sort of entrenched themselves in Aphrodite, they might forget about Pan. And you go, well, okay, they're not completely unaware that he exists. They're just focusing on their relationship with that one deity. But those are usually solitaries.
Now, so my question is could there be hope here that this balance in our religion is actually coming more into fruition?
Maybe.
Some of the older traditionalists are starting to realize, okay, ignoring the God altogether is not as fun as we thought it was.
Yeah, maybe. Again, I think it still takes a certain level of open-mindedness.
Yes.
I also think it is where we open up a bigger discussion about gender, in the sense that a well-trained witch, regardless of their gender, can uphold the role and the duties of the opposite gender.
Yes.
Within the church, if need be. It's not ideal, but they can do it. And I do think that the gay community is largely what has broken down a lot of those stereotypes and has opened people's minds to this.
Okay.
But there's still there's still some tension going on. And I don't like it. I just don't like it. I feel like we have an obligation to look at what is imbalance, what is cyclical, and what nature demands.
Right.
And I just can't understand a practice on either side that's skewed one way or the other.
It doesn't make much sense to me, but it could be the fact of the tradition we were raised in.
Perhaps. I mean, I know Lordman was in a lot of ways ahead of his time, but he's not alone in that.
No. I mean, we're not the only temple that does it this way. There are others.
No, but for sure, we have always been a male-heavy group. And I do think that's because we are equally dividing that attention, and men are able to look at our classes and our lecture series and feel like they have a purpose and
I can get something out of this. There is something for me to do here.
That's it. It's the something for me to do. I'm needed here. I can participate and I can be valued and I can do something versus, yeah, just stand there and hold that staff.
Right.
Come on.
Well, there's a difference there. What is it that I've heard said? Men are subject oriented, where women are. It's the difference in the way men and women think. Men will take a picture of a cup. Women will take a picture of them holding a cup. But the subject of both pictures is the cup.
The cup. Interesting.
And that this demonstrates the difference between the two mindsets of the two genders. Because again, men in temple, we want to do stuff. We want to build the bonfire. We want to.
Yeah, it's very tactile.
Yeah.
And it's very logical. And for women, it's more thought process and it's more, a little bit more subjective, I think, sometimes.
But see, this is what I think lends to y'all's ability in ritual so much to make, you can make a dish-shaped commercial sound spiritual. I'm not blowing smoke up yet. There's just something I see priestesses do. Y'all can make reading the phone book sound like a, which I don't think us guys have like that.
I think some do.
Some might.
I really believe that some do. I mean, I have met so many incredibly poetic, intelligent, emotional men in the pagan community that, yeah, I do think that is possible. But for whatever reason, everybody still leans to the priestess, and it's a little frustrating.
It is.
It never escapes me that the older male figures, they're not ignored, but they're not as engaged as the older women.
Yes, but me being a priest sitting at a table eating with a bunch of other priestesses, I normally wind up keeping my mouth shut.
I know you do.
Because
I know.
We know, because exactly if I open up my mouth, we know exactly what's going to happen.
Maybe not. I mean, again, I think that's part of where those walls need to be broken down a bit. I think men should feel that they can freely express their ideas inside of craft and not
Feel like they're going to get attacked.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to be ignored anyway, so what's the point?
Yeah, or you do tell your opinion, you get that look, but it's just some guy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a priest.
Exactly. It's strange. So, anyway, again, just more things to chew on. We'll spit and swallow later, I guess.
I need coffee first.
Okay, more coffee.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another episode. Pagan Coffee Talk is brought to you by Life Temple and Seminary. Please visit us at lifetempleseminary.org for more information, as well as links to our social media: Facebook, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit.
We travel down this trodden path, the maze of stone and mire. Just hold my hand as we pass by a sea of blazing pyres. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning breaks. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning